My name is Dave Schmittlein. I'm Dean of the MIT Sloan School. Welcome to MIT Sloan Reunion 2018. I'm so glad you're here. It was great to see so many of you at the reunion dinner last night. I hope you enjoyed that. Any complaints about the food? Raphael Reif at MIT. Don't do that, please. I hope that you've enjoyed this time to be able to see the evolving campus of the MIT Sloan School and MIT more broadly, to take a deep dive, connect into the classroom, and connect with each other. We have over 1,400 alumni and guests here this weekend. Extraordinarily strong reunion showing people from 44 different countries, I'm told. I hope you feel it's a great experience, and I hope that you will keep coming back for them. This afternoon, we have a wonderful opportunity to hear from Jeff Wilke. I'll introduce Jeff in just a minute. You know that Jeff and I will do a little fireside chat here. And then, for those who are interested, after about a 5-minute break, I will do a state of the school, describing where we are, where we've been, where we're going, take your questions and provide some answers to that. And then at about 5 o'clock, again, for those who wish to stay, there's an innovation showcase in this very room. So that's a little roadmap for where we're headed. I hope that all sounds good. So now as to Jeff Wilke. So you know that Jeff is CEO of Worldwide Consumer for Amazon. He joined Amazon in 1999. That was a little while ago in Amazon time. Jeff has been responsible for retail operations and technology and marketing and third-party sellers for Amazon Marketplace, for Amazon Prime. When Jeff joined in 1999, he was the first person that Amazon hired as a senior executive from another organization. Prior to that, prior to 1999, Jeff had worked for Allied Signal in pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical prime chemistry. No, that's not quite right. Close. He has experience not only in technology generally, but in operations related to chemistry. In fact, he started his work career doing computer software programming for Accenture, what's now Accenture, Anderson Consulting at the time. So he has a broad range of experiences as a manager and leader, and he's here this afternoon to share with you those experiences since his time at MIT Sloan and his perspectives on leadership. As I think you all know, I hope you all know, Jeff is a graduate of the MIT Leaders for Global Operations program. As such, he has a master's degree from the Sloan School and also a master's degree from the MIT School of Engineering. Would you please put your hands together for a warm welcome for Jeff Wilke.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Hello.
Jeff, we've never met each other.
Never.
Right. So you began at Amazon 1999, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the vision you had for Amazon when you joined it? I mean, it wasn't the kind of company that it is today.
No, it would be hard to have predicted in 1999 that it would turn out this way. We like to say it's day one. We said that in 1999, we said it in 1994, and we still say it. But when I went in 1999, I didn't have a vision for global retail. A couple of things interested me, though. I felt like something was happening on the West Coast. I had spent all of my career on the East Coast, and there was a bunch of startup activity and interesting computer science things happening on the West Coast, and I felt in some way like I was missing some of it. That was enough to get me in the door. A good friend, like many of us, career moves sometimes happen within your own network. I had a friend who was working in HR at Amazon. They needed a different kind of person to lead operations and contacted me, and I said, sure, I'll take a look. And when I met the team, I felt like there was more alignment between the way they were thinking about business and the way I had been primed to think about business at Sloan. So for example, if you read the letter to the shareholders that Jeff Bezos wrote in 1997, it says very clearly that if we have the choice between optimizing for long-term free cash flow or optimizing for the income for the quarter, we're going to take the cash flow every time. and basically says if you're an investor who wants to optimize for the short-term income, you might not want to be investing in Amazon. That really resonated for me, and it was very similar to the kind of lectures that we had in our accounting class. I mean, we actually spent, I have some LGO friends in the front row who were with me at the time, and we spent a lot of time talking about the perverse incentives that traditional accounting was driving into public company behavior at the time. You know, this is in 1993, and I was worried about it. And I saw in sort of Amazon's point of view a long-term focus that I thought was aligned with the playbook that Sloan had helped me to build and that, you know, might yield some fruit. I also noticed a company that needed some operational help. So it was run by some very smart computer scientists who were doing a lot of cool work, but man, there's some first principles that sometimes can help instead of, you know, a classic computer science approach might be to perturb the current system in all directions really fast and you'll find some optima. But sometimes, you know, first principles can help, and it turns out that operations was going to matter for Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Were you looking to join a kind of relatively young company, or not necessarily?
You know, I wasn't. I had been in larger organizations, and Accenture was relatively small when I was there, but Allied Signal was large. It's Honeywell now, and it was a large company. So,
yes.
No, I was kind of hoping to build one, but not really to join a small company.
Yeah. So I think you just started down the path of stuff that would relate to MIT, what you had learned here, what you felt that you were good at or knew about. Can you talk a little bit about what you feel like you brought to Amazon?
Well, fortunately, I brought a playbook. When I showed up in 1999, I joined in September. We had the retail holiday that was impending. I didn't know very much about the team or the work or the process. I had only 5 plants, fulfillment centers around the world, so a relatively small operation at the time. But not a lot of time, a lot of chaos, a lot of expensive waste. So I needed a playbook to implement, and as all of us would probably have done, I implemented the playbook I had, which had largely been forged through LFM, now LGO, and some experiences I had with Six Sigma and Total Quality and Lean at Allied Signal. And the strange thing is, so I walked into our fulfillment center for the first time, and I did not see a retail warehouse. Every person who had worked in operations and senior roles to that point at Amazon had come from retail. So those people tend to see retail warehouses as they had been constructed and optimized, you know, back then. I saw a factory. So I saw all the things that you see when you optimize a factory. I saw defects and waste and process and things moving through and being transformed and cycle times and push versus pull. And so the playbook that we built Amazon's operations around just was forged from these experiences I had had starting at Sloan and LFM. And it turned out to work. So I feel like we were incredibly fortunate that my HR friend made the link between what we needed in operations and some of the skills that I had, but incredibly fortunate that I had the chance to hone those skills here at MIT.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of that work related to operational efficiency, maybe. Over time, the way that Amazon grew, it wasn't only about efficiency, right? There were new products, new services. If people think about Amazon Prime as the kind of thing that you didn't know you needed until, you know, there it was and you needed it. And so you also had a role in kind of not just the operations side, but the marketing or understanding consumers. Can you talk a little bit about how you thought about that?
Sure. Well, the first piece is that when I was recruited, I didn't want to be just the operations person. I wanted to be integrally involved in the strategic choices the company was making as it grew. And Jeff pledged that when I joined and was true to that throughout. So it's this notion of, you know, you can have little operations or you can think about the whole enterprise and optimize for the entire enterprise. And we chose to think about it the second way, which was very valuable for us. I was lucky when it came to product choices and invention that, again, at MIT, we had studied some things around the voice of the customer. Anybody remember QFD, quality function deployment? I have a few heads nodding. It's part of the kind of Toyota production system package of how you would design a great product from scratch. And it emphasizes...
John Hauser had a little bit of a role in some
exactly.
of that stuff. Right, yes. Anybody remember?
Yes. Is John? Yeah. The idea is that you capture the voice of the customer in the language of the customer, right? And you work backward from that voice to construct the engineering attributes of a product, not the other way around. So again, that was John's work here, and I mean that was sort of in my brain when I showed up. And the moment we started designing products using our working backwards process, so we have a particular process for how we design new things. We try to write the press release that you would want to show the world on the day of announcement of the new product, like a press release or a blog post or something that represents what you tell the world, and work backward from that description to build the product. And we don't have business requirement docs and functional specs and the kinds of things you're used to doing when you have business people that design things and toss it over the wall to technical people. We use that press release as the design. And then we build, that way the engineers can visualize the thing you're going to build in the same way that the creators, the people doing the ideation could do. Again, the principles that I learned at Sloan helped me to understand very quickly that that was a smart way to do product design. And it did lead to things like Prime for us. I think of Prime in an interesting way. We implemented Lean in our fulfillment centers. We cut the cycle times for doing processing from about 24 hours or so, maybe 18 to 24 hours, down to about an hour and a half. And we were able to switch then to processing all of our orders in a pull base instead of kind of aggregating them over time, and then make a very precise promise. It seems crazy now. I mean, this seems very simple now. We have some words on the detail page that say, want it delivered tomorrow, order in the next 3 hours and 42 minutes. In 2002, when we first exposed those words, there was nobody else that could make that kind of precise promise. That was because of the implementation of Lean in a process with the idea that we would then somehow be able to build a product, but we didn't know how to think about that product and how we would talk about it to customers. A different team was working on some subscription ideas and came up with this idea of Prime as a way to offer fast shipping. It turned out that Prime is a subscription to this Lean implementation that we call Fast Track.
Yeah. Although through time, Prime itself has changed a fair amount, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Of course.
now my son needs to watch Premier League soccer, I believe, in that way. But anyway, we're
Thank you.
getting ahead of the story that maybe just a little bit.
And there's a great music service, and there's a great Kindle Owners Lending Library that's a part of it.
Is there a website where you could learn more about this?
Yes. That's fine. And we used to have to say in the early days, when we were asked, you'd have to say it's www://
Yeah. So.
Thank you. HTTP. Yeah, I know. Thank you.
So, I mean, that's a nice reminder that
he's working on his phone, and he looked up and said, nope, URL's wrong. Excellent.
Nice. So you're a 1993 graduate. 1991 is when you came to MIT. The World Wide Web existed for a few months. I mean, the way that you've come to understand what technology can offer people, it's like you've seen the lifetime of modern technology in your time, both at MIT and then beyond. I mean, can you talk a little bit about what it feels like to have gone through this set of waves of, well, maybe just starting with what it was like, when you were learning about what does technology mean, but then how the dynamics of that were experienced by you?
Well, I think you've had a bird's eye view of this, and not just one wave, but many of the waves that have happened over this time. We were chatting about this a little bit, thinking about the things that didn't exist or just were launched when we started here in 1991, my class, at Sloan. So the World Wide Web had just been launched. The Human Genome Project was within a few months of being launched. Protein folding was explained for the first time. The Sony had just released the first lithium-ion battery that was available for consumer goods, and color laptop screens first showed up in 1991. So all of these things that we take for granted weren't available as fodder for our strategy classes, for any of our classes, really.
Yeah.
All we had was the principles and the analogies that we could use from the present day and imagine, and then it was up to us to transform those into relevant learnings for the future. To me, that's one of the things that MIT excels at. And I think we were very, very lucky to be in a place that treasures technology, that's not afraid of it, and that helped me and my peers to understand where trajectories might be going and why we should stay curious and continue to learn throughout our lives. I think the crazy thing now is, Andy and Eric spent a lot of time talking about the exponential change that we're in the middle of. And if that's true, and we think back to 1991 was the point of launch of all these things, imagine what we haven't even invented yet that will affect the class that's graduating this year, and we'll be back sitting in this chair 25 years from now. Yeah. Whatever the speed felt like for us, it's going to be remarkably faster for them.
So I know one of the things you do, you mentioned Andy and Eric and the digital economy initiative at MIT. I know one of the things you do is to try to stay close to people who are themselves as close to change as they can possibly be. It's got to be a huge challenge for you to imagine what the future will look like and how it's relevant for Amazon.
Yeah, it's interesting. Customers tend to lead the way on this. Mm-hmm. Now, they may not always be able to express their need. This is the idea of kind of identifying latent needs versus things that people are actively asking for. Yeah. But we found when we optimize the company around trying to listen to what customers need, what can be improved in their lives, mm-hmm. what are they paying too much for, what are they wasting time on, what frustrates them. Part of pioneering is kind of wandering the world and looking for things where you say, boy, that could be made better. And I think I have an idea how to do it. We've tried to tune the company to listen to that voice. Yep. And I think that'll be the source for us of inspiration. There'll be things, I know we're going to talk some about AI and machine learning and that sort of thing. There'll be some technologies that will inspire us to invent things that no one customer is probably going to imagine. But I do think that the best source for us of seeing the future is asking customers and listening to them.
So you mentioned AI or machine learning. Some people talk about it as the thing that's going to replace us all. Others maybe
not
see
Eric and Andy.
Little bit of maybe not Eric and Andy, but me for sure. Some people also see a certain amount of hype, at least in some of the applications. You want to talk a little bit about machine learning at Amazon and where you think it makes the biggest difference?
Sure. Well, the first thing is I subscribe to the basic idea that I think Eric Bernolson and Andy have talked a lot about, which is that if you look at the last 100 years of technological change, it's not really true that technology has eliminated work. In fact, we have in the U.S. the lowest unemployment rate I think we've ever had, at least measured unemployment. What happens is technology changes work. And it may eliminate some jobs, and then new jobs are born. That's the way I think about technology. In the past 6 years, we have deployed about 140,000 robots. These are these small orange kind of pucks that you see. We have lots of YouTubes out there. So they move back and forth underneath the shelving units and pick them up and move them around. So a warehouse is no longer a bunch of static shelving. It's pods of shelving that rearrange in a complicated Brownian motion-like dance. I love that I get to use that here, and it's just... We just pause for a moment and appreciate how wonderful it is, because you know immediately what I'm talking about. I don't have to... Anyway, so you basically have this beautiful dance of inventory that starts out random and ends up completely ordered at the end, okay, using these robotics. So about 140,000 robots. At the same time, we have hired over 300,000 people. And the work that the people are doing is different than the work they were doing before. They don't have to walk as far. They don't have the same, we don't have the same kinds of safety conditions that we may have seen before, where heavy inventory is interacting with people all the time. they get to use their brains and their expertise in different ways. I think our employees are happier in this kind of world where they're working alongside of machines and robotics. So again, I'm an optimist about human work. I think we'll have more things where there's machine initiation, but still a deep need for human intuition to support the things that machines are good at. And so we're finding applications of AI and ML all over the company. I'm sure many of you are in your worlds. I'll name just a few things. I just talked about kind of warehouse work. There are algorithms all over Amazon, including the way that we merchandise and market to customers, the way that we optimize our fulfillment center operations, the way we place inventory, which is a very complicated supply chain problem, that were solved years ago in more of a classic kind of OR way. So we would use the applied math that many of us learned, optimization math, maybe mixed integer linear program again. This just feels totally comfortable for most of the people in the room. But we would use techniques that have been around for a long time and that work really well. And actually, one of the first things I did when I showed up was build an OR team. I hired a bunch of people. The first person was Russell Al Gore, who was an MIT PhD.
Thank God for that.
Right? But we've used the best tools of the day. Well, now we're finding that we can take, assuming that you have the right architecture around these algorithms, we can easily replace kind of applied math or OR algorithms with machine learning algorithms and see real advances. And you're hearing about some of this stuff in terms of process control work. Obviously you see it with thermostats. I mean, a simple home example is a smart thermostat. You still have the same sensors, roughly. You still have the same actuators, turn the furnace on and off. But you have a completely different algorithm for that transformation, and it's much more efficient in its output. And so I'm finding a lot of opportunity with these techniques. And it's not a wholesale replacement of OR. It's actually just making the algorithms better as we learn how to integrate them together. On the product side, hopefully some of you have Echoes or Alexa-enabled devices. Alexa is a machine learned environment for natural language understanding and speech. There's a lot of work going on, thousands of engineers working in that space. Our drone program, Primaire, is not a stunt. We're very serious about it. We have some terrific scientists working in this space. The challenges, of course, are controlling an autonomous vehicle in airspace safely, and then especially landing safely. And landing is really about computer vision and great control algorithms. And we need to operate in the same conditions that a commercial aircraft would operate in. And to do this autonomously requires terrific machine learning expertise. And then our AWS colleagues who are building services in the cloud are increasingly, through feedback from our engineers and other customers of AWS, are getting feedback on all of the hard work that's required by engineers to build machine learning solutions that isn't really about machine learning, but that's about the infrastructure necessary to support the massive amounts of data and the kinds of models that you want to use when you're building ML or deep learning. And so they're building services that are really frameworks and structure to make it easier and easier for scientists to build more and more complicated ML and deep learning. Yep. So there's investment really across the company. There's not one AI or ML team. It's kind of part of every part of Amazon.
And at the same time, just to remind everyone, I believe you are the single largest employer of MIT Sloan MBA graduates.
Thank you. We're very happy with the, yeah. This is like one of those supplier meetings.
That's why we're doing this today with you.
We're very, very, very happy with the product.
Thank you.
And
speaking to the video camera.
Right, we are very, very happy with the product. And thank you.
Just thought I'd mention that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll continue to need. I mean, in this world where again, the idea that the kind of enterprise that's so dependent on technology requires people who don't think of it as two separate parts of running a business, but just as an integrated whole. Yeah. This is a great place to come to find such people.
Yes. Speaking of coming to MIT, I think we agreed that you were going to reveal in this room the location of Amazon's. All right, maybe
I
not
have never
today.
been asked this question.
No, that's right.
Shocking.
Not even once. But let me. So instead of that, one thing that is announced is the investment that you're making in Boston.
Yeah.
Over 400,000 square feet. I think 2,000 technologists. At least 2,000 technologists, roughly doubling that type of workforce within the city of Boston. And so can you talk a little bit about how you see Boston or how you see that opportunity just as for Amazon?
Well, the hype around HQ2 was kind of surprising to me. But it's not going to be the only place, to your point, where we employ people and build centers of excellence. So first of all, we have fulfillment centers and customer service centers and data centers all over the US. Actually hundreds of sites. And in each of the communities where we have from dozens to thousands of people, we're a substantial employer in that community and an important corporate citizen in those communities. So that's going to continue. As we grow, we need to move inventory close to our customers, which means we'll have opportunities to build plants near cities all over the US. And they're terrific jobs. We have great pay. One of the things I'm really proud of is that our benefits system is completely egalitarian. So the people who start as full-time employees in our fulfillment centers have the exact same benefit package as I do across all of the benefits. And we're finding that our jobs are really good, a really good way for people to advance their career in things they're interested in. So we've got people who come and work for us for a few years, and then we have this program called Career Choice that 16,000 people have availed themselves of, which pays 95% of tuition for education in a field that's not related to Amazon. So what we're trying to do is get people to increase their career options by having a good job, taking classes, and then having a chance to do something else or stay at Amazon. That's working really well, and these are, again, in communities all over the US. Of course, Boston is a terrific place to recruit technologists and leaders, and it's not a surprise, I think, that we would build technology centers here. I'm going to visit later next week our robotics center, which we have here, working on both the Amazon robots that I described before and a bunch of other things that we're doing in the robotics space. So I think our investment in Boston will continue. It'll continue in other great cities around the country, and you'll know when I do, probably, or just after, when we choose
Because you said you were going to
HQ2.
email me as soon as the... So, one of the things that you just did is describe how big and how complicated Amazon is. Huge number of people, geographically distributed by product and service lines and functional responsibilities. When you think about leading an organization that's that big and complex, when you think about managing or creating or sustaining culture in an organization that's big and complex in that way, what do you think about?
We have a set of leadership principles that we've published. You can see them. It's a single page. There are 14 of them. I started thinking about this relatively early, maybe 3 years in. I found us using the same language over and over again. I spend time mentoring founders whenever I can, and I find they do the same thing where people have their little notebooks, whatever it looks like, and when you first start, you're writing everything down, then after a while, you write a little less down because you use the same stuff over and over again. Well, the things you repeat the most, I think, can often be codified into, this is, if I was gone and you wanted someone to describe the culture 10 years from now or 20 years from now, I being this imaginary founder, you might want to have those tenets crisply captured and somehow woven into the fabric of the organization. And I think we've been really purposeful and lucky that we've been able to do that with these leadership principles. They're not just pretty posters on a wall. They have weird language like, one of them says, leaders don't believe their body odor smells of perfume. Now, I like that one because if we were headed toward being a really stodgy, slow-growing incumbent that nobody wanted to work for, we probably wouldn't have that kind of language in our leadership principles. So I hope that's like startup language. I hope we keep it. There are pieces that come directly from the playbook, the LGO lean playbook, like defects get fixed so they don't get sent down the line. Those are in our leadership principles. Customer obsession is the first leadership principle for obvious reasons. The last one is deliver results. The most important ones, I think, really are the foundational ones are customer obsession, invention, we say invent and simplify, and ownership, which also includes that language that I quoted before from Jeff's 1997 letter to the shareholders. And the other thing that I would say is that all of us get to a point in our careers, I think, where you struggle to lead beyond line of sight. So when you have a very small thing with a few people, you can see it all. But at some point, you can't see everything, and there are people that are acting on your behalf that you may not even know. And we found that process, but a special kind of process, is one way to help ensure you can lead as we get really big. And it's this idea of a mechanism. So for us, quickly, a mechanism is a process or a tool that you build that you carefully gain adoption for, which we all know to do that, but most importantly, that you inspect regularly to make sure it's still adopted and to continue to improve it. So there's a little bit of the plan, do, check, act kind of loop in there. But it's so easy for big companies to get into a position where people are rewarded for launching initiatives, and then they move on to something else because they were just a hero for launching the initiative. And you come back in 5 years and no one remembers. There's a binder there, and the worst case is when there's some poor person who's actually has to do the work that was in the initiative, and no one cares. Like they're recording something in a spreadsheet every day, and no one's looking at it. It's not serving as an input to anything that matters to the company. And that's bad for the employee, and it's a waste for the company. So we try to inspect all of our mechanisms habitually to make sure that they're not wasteful, eliminate the ones that are a waste. And maybe this sounds like table stakes, but I think doing it at scale diligently has proven to be hard and incredibly useful.
Yeah. So what about for you? You also have had a leadership, people would say, journey or trajectory. Or I'm curious about experiences that might have stayed with you or changed you in this time at Amazon. Are you still learning things even now?
Yes. Yeah. It's there are 560,000 people, and at peak, because we have part-time folks that help us around the world, we had over 1 million people. I've never run that size company. So every day is a new experience in some small or large way. Yeah. I do think you said the word learning, and I think, of course, that wasn't an accident. It's gone are the days. This isn't just applicable to those of us who aspire to run large things. I think gone are the days where you acquire a skill set and the economy rewards you for the rest of your life for whatever skills you've acquired. So now we're in an age where your value is your ability to continue to learn and to keep pace, because what's scarce is understanding the newest things and the trajectory of those new things, not things that have already been codified really well. So I find the way for me to act in that world is to constantly learn, to be as humble as I can be when I encounter people who know more than I do, to try to recruit as many people who know more than I do as possible, to reward them for that. We have a culture that we like to describe as truth-seeking. And sometimes truth-seeking is a pain. When your boss is truth-seeking on you and you're probably not right, it can be really painful. That's happened a few times over the years. But I would...
Wait, to you or to people who report to you?
To me. Okay. And I'm sure to people, if I had some of my colleagues here, they would say the same thing about me. But having very high standards, seeking the truth, being willing to admit that you're wrong, that's something that some of us had a leadership mentor named Don Davis, who we learned a ton from and was at MIT for a long time. He was adamant that it's important for leaders to be able to admit they were wrong. And that's been a big part of our ability to experiment, to stay nimble and robust even as we scale. Yeah. An experiment isn't an experiment if you already know the outcome. Yeah. So you have to be willing to accept, if you're inventing, you have to be willing to accept failure. You have to be willing to be wrong. You shouldn't be wrong in the exact same way twice in a row. But you have to be willing to be wrong. And then when you're wrong, learn from your mistakes and hopefully learn enough to follow the trajectory of science.
So maybe science is a good way. Before we open it up to questions, which we will do in just a couple of minutes, and we have a few minutes for questions. When you think about science and engineering, I hope you think about MIT.
Yes.
And when you think about MIT,
yes.
maybe in its, right. What does MIT mean to you, or when MIT is at its best, what is it?
Well, this won't be news to the people in this room, but I found MIT to be this great petri dish for science and technology-based ideas to grow. And why can't companies be that way? So for me, my experience here inspired me to understand what you can build if you build a place that cherishes technology and technical people, that gives them the room to experiment and innovate and learn and fail and regroup and push boundaries and limits, to engage in dialogue and debate about those things in an open way. And then to build that kind of a culture into every aspect of the company, not just the labs or the technology area or operations or some other place, but build the fabric of every part of the company, finance and HR and science and operations and sales, marketing, build all of it around a deep understanding and care of technology. I think MIT does this really well, and we sort of take it for granted, those of us who've had the great honor to be here. I feel really lucky to work with people that I think that way about building a company. And I think the fruits of that kind of company creation in this technological age will be, extraordinary.
You know, that whole approach is MIT intellectual property, and so I'm kidding. Not really. I wonder if anyone has a question or a comment for Jeff, and if I could ask, if you'd please use a microphone that's handed to you, and maybe say your name. That would be nice. And so I see someone up here on the right.
Hi, my name is Brian. Now, Amazon, obviously a very successful company and a large, or maybe the largest employer in the country. What is the corporation's commitment to paying a living wage to all of those warehouse workers?
That's a great question. So I'm super proud of the jobs that we have in the warehouses. The wages and our bonuses and the stock that we grant, our average pay for our hourly folks is $15 an hour. And in many places and for many people, it's more. And then we have the terrific benefits that I talk about that are unusual for those kinds of jobs, because they're the same benefits package that we have to compete against the folks in Silicon Valley who are hiring just software engineers. Everybody in the company has that same package. The career choice program that I talked about a minute ago has been adopted by 16,000 hourly people to advance their careers and their lives. So we are very committed to building a business that takes care of the people in that business all around the world. And we think this is a business imperative because our customers are everywhere in the world, and our customers are not going to think of us the way they do now, which is very positively, if we don't continue to keep their trust by being a great corporate citizen.
So I'm noticing it's 4 o'clock. Is there maybe one more question, either from this side to balance things, or I see a question right here. Maybe we could get the microphone. Thanks.
Well, I should say one other thing about the Fulfillment Center. So we have tours of our fulfillment centers across the country, and they're open to anybody. So if you ever wonder what it's like for our hourly people to work in our company, you should come to a tour. And they go on all the time, so it's not like there's a narrow window and we polish everything for the tour. We decided long ago it was important. We are a substantial entity in the economy, and we believe that substantial entities deserve scrutiny, and our job is to pass the scrutiny with flying colors and to be very open to that scrutiny.
Okay.
Okay, it's Brian, also from class of '93. I just wanted to know what you think we can expect for the next year. What are the things that you see are going to happen for sure, and what are some of the things that you're not sure that you'd like to know about the sort of the immediate future?
So about the next year in the world for Amazon?
For your job, for the job you're doing, things that are important from where you are.
Well, the simplest way for me to answer this, the easiest way, is to talk about the things that won't change. So I think customers will want low prices, not higher prices. They'll want a lot of selection, not a smaller selection. They want it to be easy to find what they want, but they want more things. And they want it to be more convenient. You know, our customers are not asking us to slow down our delivery speed. They're asking us to speed up. So a lot of the work that we're doing 19 years in for me is still about lowering prices, adding selection, including grocery most recently. You'll see a lot of stuff in the grocery space. We're super excited about the partnership we have with Whole Foods. That's been really fun for me to be a part of. I was sharing an anecdote earlier on that one that is kind of fun. So we did the announcement. John Mackey and I were on stage in Austin to talk about our future together. And I described how much I admired Whole Foods for their work on introducing Americans to natural and organic food, you know, over 30 years ago. And they changed the way I eat and the way my family, I saw colleagues at my 25th reunion who looked at me and said, boy, you've lost some weight. And there's a reason, because I eat differently than I did 25 years ago. And I thank Whole Foods for that. So I was describing to this audience my Whole Foods-induced hotel meal at breakfast, which included included fruits and vegetables like quinoa and asparagus and some other stuff. And John Mackey immediately, without thinking, looks at me and says, quinoa's not a vegetable. So, in the next year, I pledge to know a lot more about natural and organic food, even though I've made progress in the last 25 years. We're going to help continue to make it easier and easier for customers to have access to. I think everybody should be able to eat Whole Foods quality food, and we have work to do to make it available to everybody. So you'll see a lot in that space. You're going to continue to see Alexa get better and better. That's just a great example of something that gets better the more it's used. And we've made good progress. Our goal in the next 5 years is for you to be able to have a terrific 20-minute conversation with Alexa that feels natural. And there's an academic prize, actually, that we've established for universities around the country.
Hopefully it won't be a 45-minute conversation, because then we won't need me anymore.
No, so I think you'll see some really neat output from our studio business. Both, you know, we do film and TV kind of length series. There's a lot of work going on in that space. That makes Prime more valuable, which is why we do it. So it turns out that when people watch a great movie from Prime Video, they buy more Tide. It's totally true. So you know, we're going to produce great studio stuff because we also want them to buy more Tide. So there'll be lots of things that you can expect, and then, of course, some things that will try to surprise you that I can't reveal that we're working on, and maybe everything in between. One other thing you'll probably see is more and more global work. So it's clear right now our sales are split, you know, roughly 60-40 US and 40 outside, and there's clearly more domestic product outside of the US than in. So I think over time you'll see more and more international opportunities for us, in part because our model, low prices, great selection, convenient experience, pretty much resonates everywhere.
I'm afraid we got to wrap it up for now. I think you all know that Jeff is one of our more visible MIT Sloan School alums. I hope you feel, as I do, that having someone who is this visible and who represents so much of what's authentic about MIT is a really great thing. Would you please thank him for spending this time with us? Thank you.